All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bus 322 class. Today we'll be looking at perception of others and consumer behavior. Can you please send me a chat? I'm not sure if I've done this class with you before, if I've treated this a particular topic. I know I was supposed to have done it last 2 weeks ago, but I'm not sure we were able to meet. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. So perception of others and consumer behavior is what we'll be looking at today. And don't worry, I'm already recording it, and I'll send the link and the slides to you before at the end of the lecture. All right, so by the end of this session, you should be able to give several definitions of perception, state the perception process, explain misperception of or perceptual errors, explain the factors that affect perceptual selection, and state the relevance of perception to consumer behavior. So what is perception? Perception is the process of selecting, organizing, and interpreting stimulus received through the 5 physical senses of vision, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. It is also the process by which an individual becomes aware of the environment and interprets it so that it fits into his or her frame of reference. Finally, perception is the meaning we attribute on the basis of past experience to stimuli as received through our 5 senses. So what are we trying to say here? Perception is how you see something, how you experience something, and then how it makes you feel, how you're able to explain it to yourself. So for instance, somebody might look at an average height, maybe somebody that of 5 feet. Somebody who is looking at him and is maybe 3 feet tall might come and report that, that man is a tall man. But meanwhile, if it was somebody that was 6 feet tall that saw him, that person will come back and report that that person is a short person. You understand? So that shows you how the different perception is for the two of them. He was looking up at him. The short person was looking up at him. The 3 feet person was looking up and he was saying this person is tall because he's looking up at him. But meanwhile, the 6-footer is looking down at him and saying this person is short. But they are seeing the same person. It is just the experience that each person is having at that time that is different. So the experience and how he's able to interpret that experience. For the short person, he was looking up. But for the tall person, he was looking down. And they will both interpret that experience in different ways. So there are many factors that will change that will shape your perception. The first one is the physical characteristics. You understand? So in that example I gave, where somebody who is average height is being seen as tall by a shorter person and is being seen as short by a longer person, it was his physical characteristics that, that both individuals that experienced it was what he looked like. That was what they saw. What they saw was the physical part of that person. You understand? So they were able to just look at him, and because he looked big to one person, he looked small to the other person. But that was the physical characteristics. So the second one that can shape perception is the relation of the stimuli to our surroundings. So is it close? Is it far? Is it hot or cold? You understand? Those are the things that you have to look at. How does that stimuli or that stimulus, how does it relate to the surroundings? Does it blend in, or is there a sharp contrast? So those are the different things that would help to shape your perception. Is it loud? Is it quiet? Things like that. So those are how the stimulus will relate to the surrounding. Of course, it's unlimited. There are so many of them. You understand? So the third factor that shapes perception is the conditions within ourselves. So you that you are perceiving, are you tall? Remember that the tall guy was looking down. So in his mind, that's a short person. Then are you at ease? Are you angry? Are you taking your time to look at the thing well, or are you in a hurry and you just glanced at it and moved away? So there are different conditions that we may find ourselves in. Are you in, if you are in a situation where you are scared and all of a sudden you hear another loud bang and you're already scared before, you know that you are going to think that that bang may be something dangerous. Meanwhile, it may not be. So the condition that you yourself find yourself in will, to a large extent, also shape your perception. And there are some things that happen for you to be able to, before you get to perception. Now, these are very quick. They happen very quick. So it's not as if you are going to wait for it. No, they happen very quick. And at that point, you will have fully perceived something. You will have reached the point where you perceive something. So the first thing that will happen is what we call selection or screening, which is that you would either see something or feel something. So remember that we're using the 5 senses to perceive. So it's either you smell something, you see something, you hear something, you touch something, or you taste something. But what happens is that each of those, or the senses are engaged, are interacted, your senses interact with the stimulus. There's a stimulus to your senses and they interact with it. And then that is what we call selection, because you are giving your attention to that thing, no matter how briefly. You are giving your attention to that feeling, that experience of either the touch, smell, noise, or taste, or visual. Whatever it is, you are giving your attention to it at that point in time. And that's what we call selection. You have selected to pay attention to that particular feeling. So once you have been able to pay attention to that particular experience, then you must interpret it. Your mind must go through it and say, okay, how am I seeing this? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this something I should be scared of? Is this something that I should like? Is this something I should hate? Those processes go on within you. You are not even aware it's going on. It's an unconscious process, but it goes on. Your mind interprets it in one way or the other. And once your mind has interpreted it, it is followed by a response. So if your mind interprets it as something dangerous, your response will be to flee. If your mind interprets it as something nice, your response will be to move near it or to try to continue the experience. You understand? So those 3 steps together make up the perceptual process. And so let's look at them one by one. The first one is screening, which is the actual sensing of a stimulus by an individual. So your senses will feel something and you give attention to that experience at that time. Then after that, you interpret, you extract some meaning and make sense of what is happening in the situation. So you try to interpret, what am I seeing? Is it good? Is it bad? And all that. And then the next one is you do a response. An individual's reaction or response is also known as what we call behavioral interpretation of perception. So what is not just enough for you to perceive, you have to have a response. Any stimulus must make you have a response. Either you continue doing it or you stop it. You understand? So you must have a response in one way or the other. So now there are cases where you might perceive something and perceive it in the wrong way. You understand? You are seeing something and you are feeling that, okay, this thing is good or this thing is bad. And you are feeling it in the wrong way. Why? Because you have some previous biases. Biases are previous preconditions, that would shape your perception. Remember, we said that one of the factors that shape perception is the condition within you. So that condition within you can ultimately lead to misperception. So we're going to look at some of those conditions and those common misperceptions. We'll look at them next. So the first misperception is stereotyping. And stereotyping is an overgeneralization that groups different individuals into categories based on presumed similarity between them. Like for instance now, you know, they say Yoruba men, you say they are Yoruba what? Yoruba demons, right? That's stereotyping, because not all Yoruba men may be promiscuous. You understand? When you talk about Igbo, I don't mean any cultural, I don't mean to, you know, any offense, but I'm just using them as academic examples. When you talk about Igbo, they say, oh, they like money. But I've met a lot of people that didn't really care about money. So stereotyping is when you take a group of people that have some perceived similarity and you just overgeneralize that, if this guy is Igbo, he's going to like money. Or if this guy is Yoruba, he's going to like women. And it may not generally be so. You know, in other clients, you know, you hear people say things like Americans are loud, you know, but not all Americans are loud. But when you just have a generalization, you have in your mind that, oh, anybody that is American, because you've met one or two Americans and they were very loud, you might now have it in your mind that all Americans are loud. And that would be a misperception. All right. So that's one of the misperceptions, common misperceptions that we have. And it's based on your previous interaction with that particular category of people. So because you have interacted with that one or two of those people, you can now decide that, oh, because I've, you know, interacted with 3 or 4 Yoruba men, and all they used to talk about was girls, that means the rating Yoruba men talk about is girls. And that would be a misperception because it may not necessarily be true. The next one there is projection. So that is when you are taking what you feel about yourself and you are projecting it, you are attributing it to other people. So you are saying, maybe because you feel that you are like, for instance, you can look at somebody that is yellow, and because she's a yellow lady, and because she's a yellow lady, she thinks that, you know, men are always going to be after her. So anytime any man talks to her, she will, you know, immediately look at, he's trying to toast her. It is her own condition. The man may not be trying to toast her, he might just be trying to say hello, he might just be, you know, wanting to be a genuine friend. But because of her own personal attributes, she would now project to the other and say, no, that this is what this guy is after, because that's what every other person is after. You understand? So she's projecting her own insecurities on the person. The second misperception is defense mechanisms. And defense mechanisms are buffers between ourselves and objective reality, which keeps us from perceiving things that will upset us. So you're already the kind of person that feels that Oshodi will be rough, that they will rob you there. You understand? So you already have put in a buffer that, okay, no matter what happens, I will not go to Oshodi. Or you can be such a, another way it can happen is when, you know, you think as children back then, many of us thought our mothers, I remember people saying, I'm not even sure my mother that gave birth to me. So, because you always saw our mothers as being wicked. And so there were times when, before you know that there are some things that she will not like. You understand? So you would have already set yourself just to say, oh, I must avoid this so that, you know, mommy doesn't get angry and beat me. And because you have put those things in place, it stops you from seeing even the good sides of your mother, because you're always going to just think that she's mommy is wicked, you know, your mom is wicked. And that stops you from seeing some of the good sides. So these are the things that we put in place. Once you have that preconception, the precondition that this is the way this woman is, then it will stop you from seeing some of the other good sides of her. So another one is selective perception. And here, people would only see what they think will help them satisfy their needs. And they will ignore anything that is going to disturb them. So here in selective perception, you can see everything, but because you know, like for instance, the way a politician will come and say, you know, recently we had an issue with Buhari, you know, he tweeted something on Twitter and Jack removed it and Twitter removed it. And you could see like Mohammed come out and say, why would you remove the president's tweet? So that's selective perception, because he ignored the fact that the tweet may be disturbing to some people. He ignored the fact that it is Twitter, it is not presidential Twitter. It's not owned by the president. It is owned by, you know, private individuals, and they can decide what they want on their platform. So he ignored all those things. He ignored the fact that people were actually upset about the tweet and didn't want, you know, their president sounding that way. His own was just that they are trying to confuse Nigerians or whatever it is that he said. So he was having what we call selective perception. He was ignoring all the other things that could have helped him to make, you know, a more realistic statement, but he was just focusing on a small part of it because that was what he needed to do to satisfy his boss. So another one is attribution. So attribution is when we try to understand events and behavior by interpreting it as caused by other factors. So also remember when we're also in this same example of Lai Mohammed trying to defend his boss and saying, oh, it is Twitter's fault. So he's trying to use Twitter as, you know, the factor of as having caused other people being upset. You understand? He's trying to attribute the blame to Twitter, whereas the original tweet came from his boss. You understand? So attribution is where we try to understand events, or we try to position events or interpret events as being caused by another person instead of, you know, laying the blame to where it is. You know, so attribution is another misperception that we have as human beings. The halo effect. Now, I'm sure, you know, growing up, some of us that had siblings, well, perhaps it was even you that you were the favorite child, but there are some times where you perceive that your sibling is the favorite child, and you will know that no matter what that child does, the mother will not see that the child is doing bad. That's what we call the halo effect. The person perceives all the attributes of a person in a similar manner based on one characteristic. So everything that the person does, you will just think that everything is good. So once, even though whatever everybody is saying is bad, but because of one characteristic or one trait of you as your mother, as a mother, or of the child, something you like about that child, everything that child will do, you will just think that it's okay. So also for men and women, you know, in a relationship between men and women, there are some women that the man will be maltreating you, but because of the love you have for the man, you know, you see him, you are undergoing the halo effect, and you are seeing that everything that man is doing is good, even though the man is maltreating you. You understand? So that's another common misperception. Another one is distortion. And this is a defense behavior which occurs when we encounter information which is incongruent with our self-concept and distorts what we see or totally avoid seeing what actually exists. Now, this happens a lot. You understand? When you come about something and you are like, this can't be so. So you will just distort it and you avoid seeing the reality. You will just continue to, even if you are telling that this thing is not good for you, you will say, no, leave it, it's good for me. You know, it happens a lot in for smokers. You know, there's a lot of information on smoking that this smoking, it can kill. But you have a self-concept that sees smoking as being cool, or you see yourself as somebody that smokes. So what you will continue to do is you will continue to deny that smoking cannot kill because I see myself as a smoker. So you are distorting the information that you are getting, and because it has passed through your self-concept, and you just avoid it, and you will see that people still continue to smoke, even if they've been told it is bad for them. So those were the misconceptions and misperceptions, sorry. And we'll now, right now, we'll look at some of the factors that affect perceptual selection. And some of these factors are what would enable you to probably perceive correctly or incorrectly. You understand? So the first factor is the intensity of the stimulus. Now, the more intense the stimulus is, if you taste something that is very sugary, the more likely that it is that it will be perceived. When you taste, if fire touches you, if it's just a warm, maybe your iron was warm and you put it on your hand, you may not actually, feel it. But if it is hot and it touches you, you are more likely to perceive it as, I'm touching something hot. There was a story about a frog that was put in a pot of water. Now, frogs are amphibians, so they can regulate their body temperature to, suit their environment. So this frog was put alive in a pot of water, and he regulated his body temperature because water was cold. He regulated his body temperature to suit the cold water. But then they put fire under the water, and the water started to boil. And as the water was getting hotter and hotter, the frog was adjusting its temperature to, withstand the heat. But at some point, by the time it was too late, the water was boiled, and the frog had ended up boiling itself in the pot of water because it was regulating his body temperature to suit the water. So that is intensity is one of the factors that would affect perception, because the more intense a stimulus is, the more quickly you are able to, and that's how we stay alive as human beings. You understand? Once we feel an intense stimulus, we are likely to react in such a way, we will react quicker, and that's what keeps us alive. Another factor is size. The size of an object will influence how quickly it is perceived. So bigger objects will be perceived quicker, you understand, than smaller objects. So you will see bigger things before you will see smaller things. That's the way it is. Contrast. Yes, another factor is contrast. So external stimuli which stand against the contrasting background will receive more attention. So if there's a very sharp difference between the background and the stimulus, then of course you see such an object quicker than one that is blending in with the background. Repetition, no. So that is, if a message is repeated over and over and over and over again, if there's a noise, that's how our alarm clocks work. Once the alarm clock is timed, reaches the time when you set, the alarm clock will continue to ring and ring and ring and ring and ring, and it will definitely get your attention. No matter how deep the sleep that you are in, it will get your attention because it is repeating itself over and over and over again. So a repeated external stimulus gets more attention than a single one. Please excuse me. Now, motion. So people will pay more attention to moving objects in their field of vision than to stationary ones. So you are most likely, you are programmed to most likely track something that is moving with your eyes, move it. That's something that is staying still. If something is staying still, it will not necessarily call your attention as much as something that is moving about, whether fast or slow. But as long as there's motion, it's likely to catch your attention. And of course, the faster the motion, the faster you will perceive it. So novelty and familiarity. So new objects or events in a familiar setting will get the attention of the perceiver quicker. You understand? If something is new, you've been coming somewhere, and then so all of a sudden they put something new there, it's likely to catch your attention. This hasn't been here before, and things like that. So while there are still other things in the room, but you don't see those things, it's the new thing that you will see because it's the one that is different to you. Now, why do we bother about perception? Why is it important to us to the study of consumer behavior? Now, you have to, as a marketer, you have to know how to exploit the subjective components of perception so that you can make customers notice your products as new and different. You have to, if you are going to do something, is either you are going to make sure that the color is brighter, there's contrast in your packaging, or where possible, make your packaging bigger, and where you can animate your packaging, animate it. Because all these little factors, all these things that will make your product more noticeable, and it will help you as a marketer to increase your sales and improve the performance of your product. So in summary, throughout this study session, we have been able to define perception, look at the factors that shape perception, examine the components of the perceptual process. We have gone through the misconception or perceptual error based on biases. We have also looked at the factors that affect perceptual selection and the implication of perception to consumer behavior. So that brings us to the end of this study session. If you have any questions, please send it to the chat message now, and I will answer it. I'm recording this session, and eventually I would upload it to my YouTube channel shortly and after the class. If you have any questions, please send them to the chat now. If you don't have any questions, or if anything occurs to you later that you want to ask, you can always ask it on my YouTube channel. I will answer any questions that are answered there. So, but you must be following me to ask questions. I'm not going to answer anybody who's not following. So go to my YouTube channel, follow me, and ask any questions that you have. I'm still waiting now if there's anybody that has any question I don't want to ask. If there isn't, we can end the class. I'll send the slides and videos over as soon as possible. Any questions? Okay, somebody says, show the implication of perception again. So this is that slide. I don't know if you want me to explain anything, just that I should show it. Any other questions? All right. I'm going to send you the slide. You don't need to show. I don't need to show it to you one by one. I will send you the slides. I will send you the slides. All right. That's Abati Abraham saying I should show the factors of perception. I will send you the slides so you would have it. Yes, in fact, I will send it now. Let's see. I'll send it immediately I'm done with this. I'll send it to Cardoso. All right. Since there are no questions, let's call it a day. Thank you all for being there, and see you all next time. All right.